Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Bowell, and I head up product management for our editor and engine here at Unity. In this session, I'll be covering the highlights of our upcoming Unity 2020 LTS and Unity 2021.1 releases. So let's get started. Here's the journey we're going to take you on over the next 30 minutes. We're going to break down the difference between the LTS and the tech stream. We're going to take a look at some of the themes for 2021 that we heard from you. And then we're going to open up the box and look at what's inside both the LTS release for 2020 and our 2021.1 release. So before we start, though, I'd like to share some of the inspiring titles and projects from creators on our platform, because this is really what drives Unity forward. It's also what inspires our teams in R&D. A great example is Oddworld Soulstorm, which is planned for release this year. And there's something here which is really special about the scale that the Oddworld Inhabitants team created in this 2.5D platformer, really pushing what's possible graphically with Unity across both Windows, PS4, PS5, or Crash Bandicoot on the Run, which is a new title coming soon from King. And in this case, they're utilizing the Universal Render Pipeline, or URP, to really help them reach the widest range of handsets around the world, which opens up, of course, a truly global audience for their title. Or a game like Fall Guys, a game I spent way too much time on last year. Absolutely magical game, and it's just amazing to see how they're leveraging our multiplayer tech to make that a really fun experience. Or The Falconeer, which is developed by solo indie developer Thomas Sala. Again, a really impressive launch day title for the Xbox Series X. And Thomas was able to take advantage of really all the Xbox had to offer there to be able to hit a really solid 120 frames a second in his title. And he shipped that across Windows, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One. And of course, look, there are many, many more titles, and it's really amazing to see all of your amazing work. And it is truly what drives us forward. And it comes back to our belief at Unity that the world is a better place with more creators in it. And that's what underpins our philosophy in R&D, that it's our role to build a real-time 3D platform that is both powerful and accessible. And it drives us forward to really solve super hard problems in engineering, in data, in operations, so that you can all be successful and create and operate your titles. So let's jump in and talk releases. So for us, everything comes down to release day. It's the moment that we get to share what we've been working on with you. And each year we, of course, build on the innovation and the stability provided by the last. So let's take a look at how that works at Unity. So we have two types of releases, our LTS and our tech releases. Our LTS, which stands for long-term supported, is our battle-tested release. It's supported for 2 years with bug fixes and key platform updates. And it's really recommended for projects that are beyond pre-production, where you really just want to bed down and in something stable. And it's also the default install that many of our first users will experience, and just underlining our commitment to a users first, quality first experience. And then we have our tech stream. So this is about access to the latest and greatest tech from Unity. We release that twice a year, and it's about really where you're in pre-production, you're doing discovery, you're prototyping. The support there will be between each tech release, so approximately 5 to 6 months. And let's just zoom out the picture a little bit, just to give you a sense of how these things are released so you can plan. So the releases for our LTS are annual at the start of each year. And as I mentioned, the support for those are 2 years. And of course, it's a accumulation of all of the great tech that we've released in the previous years. So 2020 LTS will have everything in our 2020 tech stream, 20.1 and 20.2. And this year we'll be, of course, releasing our 2021 tech stream, which will have .1 in the spring and .2 in the fall. So one question we often get is, how do we establish the themes for our releases? Well, the truth is we get a lot of data from a lot of different inputs. And one of the biggest drivers of input is feedback from you. And that's across our direct conversations on the show floor when we could do that, in forums, from social media. And a lot of the innovation and change in the engine over the last number of years has been driven by feedback from you. And let me share what we've been hearing from you most recently. So really, these are the core themes from your feedback. It's about quality. You just want to ensure that you have a stable and robust platform to work on, and it's quality top to bottom, from your development experience all the way through to the quality of what you can ship to your customers. It's about productivity, which is like getting a high return on your investment when you spend time in the editor, and just staying in the flow, and essentially having Unity somewhat get out of your way and just allow you to create. And of course, performance. So being able to just nail your technical and creative ambitions for your products. So both hitting frame rate, and for example, within budget, or just simply being able to iterate at a rate and getting there as quickly as you can. Something else key to your experience with Unity is having the widest platform support, and something that you've wanted us to continue with is having that width, breadth, and depth of device support, just being there for you on launch day for new consoles, new desktop platforms, or new XR platforms. And of course, something else which is about really making Unity accessible to all creators. You really wanted us to make sure that you could collaborate with everyone on your team, be they a programmer, a designer, or an artist, and really see us focus on role-based workflows where individual roles can achieve what they need to through the engine. There's a clear, fully paved highway to allow them to do that. Great. So let's take a look at some of our releases. Unity 2020 LTS. Our LTS will be released in March and will be followed by our 2021 release, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. So as mentioned, our LTS is the sum of all the great work that we shipped in 2020.1 and 2020.2. It'll be supported for 2 years from its release date, and is really fully battle tested and ready to go. So let's take a look at the LTS through our first big theme from your feedback: quality. It's about both the development experience, but also about the quality of the results that you can achieve. It's about the big things, the tools and the workflows, and also about all the small things that improve your day-to-day life using Unity. So I'd like to start with our Universal Rendering Pipeline, or URP. So this is designed to be a fast, scalable pipeline. The team have been working hard to make this ready for your productions. It's designed to run on all platforms. It's perfect for any genre, and it's really a great starting point for you to customize and really make it your own. And we've ensured that it has support for all of the artist tools, so visual effects graph, the shader graph, and adding other features like support for render passes. And ultimately, URP will be the successor to our built-in renderer. So it's definitely worthwhile you taking a look at this and making a plan to move your project across when the time is right. So let's take a look at some of the cool stuff that we've added through 2020. And let's start with camera stacking. So, when you're building a game, there are many instances where you want to include something that's rendered just out of the main camera's context. For example, maybe a pause menu, you want to display a version of your character, or a mech game where you need some kind of special rendering setup for the cockpit. So camera stacking is really useful here to layer the output of multiple cameras to create a single combined output, and just allows you to create those really cool effects as you're seeing here, 3D models and a 2D UI, or a cockpit, as is the case here. Another really nice feature is screen space ambient occlusion, or SSAO. So this is about approximating the brightness or darkness of a specific surface based on its surrounding surfaces and how exposed it is to the ambient lighting in the scene. So it's really about improving the visual quality of ambient lighting. It just adds a lot of depth to your scene. Another great new shader is our complex lit shader, which you can use to create clear coat maps. This really lets you simulate and mimic materials such as car paint. So let's look at some features under the quality theme for programmers. So of course, a key part of your day-to-day workflows is debugging, and something where you'll also need quite a bit of debugging support is when you're upgrading projects to new versions of Unity. It can lead to lots of compilation errors, and the larger your project, the more likely you are, of course, to run into these kinds of issues. So we have something now called safe mode that really helps you simplify the process of fixing these errors. Just goal here is to get your project back into a functional state as quickly as possible. And of course, we want to encourage you to be able to easily and painlessly upgrade to new versions of Unity. So let's take a closer look. When Unity detects that there are compilation errors at startup, you'll be basically prompted to enter safe mode, and then you're presented with a more reduced editor environment that just lets you focus on getting your project back to a functional state. Idea here is just to really get project upgraded quickly and reduce the amount of time you're waiting for imports and so on, and avoid possible cache pollution from incorrect import artifacts. So something else you'll probably do a lot of is switching between release and debug modes. And you'll want to stay in release mode for most of the time that you're working in Unity. Of course, just testing gameplay and so on is the right place to be. But there's times when you just want to quickly switch into debug mode. So we've enabled that now within the editor. And it's just a really easy switch. Great. So switching across now to productivity. And really, again, this is about enabling big teams and teams to work better, work faster, and across the development lifecycle with workflows that are smooth and consistent, and so on. And let's take a look at the shader graph here. So lots of really nice improvements in the graph editor itself. So performance has really been improved here as you move around. There is now a new endpoint of the graph. It's a collection of feature blocks, called the master stack, rather than a monolithic master node. It just allows the single graph to be easily switched between shader models. We also have this graph inspector, which consolidates all the settings from the master nodes and all the other nodes into a single location. Kind of lets you indicates which features are compatible with the current selections. Again, really helpful workflows. For programmers, we now have support for the latest version of C#, C# 8. And this really expands the array of what you can do in Unity with all the latest C# standards. At its core, it's always about being able to achieve more with fewer lines of code, things that abbreviated switch statements and so on. But it's also enabled us to add support for Roslyn analyzers, which I'll talk about in a minute. And being able to really do things like configure root namespaces easily. And in fact, let's take a quick look at that. Of course, namespaces in C# is just a really efficient way to organize your code and avoids collisions between your code and other packages and libraries. So now this is something that you can configure in settings for a given assembly. And when you create any new scripts, it will be automatically added for that assembly, which is just a really helpful workflow for your day-to-day work within the editor. Really helps with efficiency and make sure that something that is obviously easy to forget as you're working. So Roslyn Analyzer, and for those that don't know, this is a way to basically do kind of code checking and analyze rules that you set up to inspect your code for style and for quality and any other issues. There's lots of existing rules that are supplied, but you can also add your own, and you can basically promote your own best practices or coding standards within your team. So you can do this both asynchronously in the background while you're using Unity, and also, of course, you can run these directly from the command line too. Great. Now let's take a look at performance. Of course, this is just really key and a foundational part of any engine, about just being able to let you hit your creative and technical targets. Everything from how long you wait for imports, all the way through to just how quickly Unity is doing things under the hood. So let's take a look at lighting, which is of course at the heart of graphics rendering. And it's an area where we place a lot of attention. And in this case, we've been focusing hard on the progressive light mapper, which is a system for really fast path tracing, providing baked light maps and light probes, and doing this in a progressive way in the editor. So we've been working hard to basically provide a much more improved interactive workflow. So it's about bringing baking times down, of course, but also really providing you with much more visibility and estimation on when that bake is going to finish. And key is that it now lets you bake selected portions of light maps. So it makes you basically able to iterate quickly in your scene. And we've achieved that by baking GI at the light map resolution for each texel individually. And both for GPU and CPU, they now have a higher bounce limit, and they also use blue noise sampling for improved light map quality. So what does all of this mean? Well, basically the GPU light mapper uses less memory when baking large light maps. So you can bake larger projects than you could in the past. And of course, when, if memory does run low, we can throttle memory usage internally and give you back control. So let's just take a really quick look at some of that. Here's a really quick example showing the difference between 1 indirect bounce, 5 and 50, and the overall improvement in quality that you see in your scene. Now, switching gears to performance for programmers, something we care a lot about is providing a world-class suite of tools for profiling. So we want to make it easier to turn insights into actions and ultimately allow you to get the maximum performance out of the hardware, understand what's going on under the hood, find those bottlenecks, and really figure out how your code is running on target device. So let's start off with the profiler itself. This can now be run as a standalone app, which reduces the performance overhead. When profiling the editor, it just gives you really clean profiler data. There's metadata support for the C# profiler API, and lots of improvements to just the memory overhead and capture times that the memory profiler preview package was using. And you can now access GPU profile data directly through the recorder API. For the profile analyzer, so this is what enables you to compare frame and market data from a set of profiler frames at the same time. So this is really just lots of focus here on the overall experience of using this tool. Definitely a really valuable tool in your day-to-day work. So there was just a lot of quality of life improvements here that we wanted to focus on. And adding things like code coverage, which just helps you visualize which lines of code are being tested. One more example here, you can also create a really handy feature, just create custom profiler modules just to visualize the stats that are important to your project. Again, just a small thing, but again, it's all about just really giving you the tools that you need. And there are many. I really recommend you check out the profiling updates. We've got support for flow events, which is really cool about letting you debug how Unity's scheduling all of your jobs across threads. You can now also visualize the render and memory profiler stats in your players, which is a really nice feature, kind of being able to do that in a heads-up display way. So lots of things there, just allowing you to basically get the maximum out of Unity for your given game. And now we're going to move on to Unity 2021.1. Great. So let's talk about Unity 21.1 shipping in a few weeks. And of course, there are hundreds of improvements across the board, from bug fixes through to just performance improvements and lots of quality of life features. I just want to give you a sneak peek of a few of the features improvements you can look forward to. So just to set the broader context, I'd like to just present the overall theme for our 2021 tech release series. And a big part of this is continuing to be the stable foundation for all of you. And it's, again, continuing those themes of quality, core product stability. It's continuing the theme of productivity with workflows and usability. It's continuing the theme of being really there for platforms and our platform reach. And of course, then performance and iteration speed, which is really a huge part of what you'll see in the next few slides. And on top of that, we're also welcoming new users with visual scripting. We want to enable more types of games to be built with Unity with a native networking and multiplayer solution. and of course, delivering on our promises for modern rendering and getting our rendering pipelines to be really production ready. So let's take a look at some key features for artists and quality, and let's take a look at what's new for our rendering pipelines. So one of the most requested features for URP is now available: point light shadow support. Of course, these are ways, this is point light shadows, help you create more realistic simulation of lamps and torches and campfires and other local sources of light in a scene. This is just a nice scene that was upgraded recently to URP to take advantage of that feature. And of course, then you also have another graphics update, are static shadowcasters, specifically in HDRP. So static shadowcaster lets you cache only a portion of non-directional shadow maps. Goal here is really to improve performance for projects with lights that don't move or move infrequently, but still need to cast dynamic shadows. So some really nice performance updates there. And then from the programming perspective, on the theme of improving quality and of course ensuring your projects are up to date on the latest versions, while also being backwards compatible, version defines in 21.1 will be a helpful addition to your toolbox. And really what this lets you do is to target, add a specific version define, so you can write code for a different version of Unity and be quite specific about the versions of and which C# API they depend on, and really lets you manage that in a really efficient way. Now, we've also expanded the tools a lot over the past few years with lots of visual graph-based tools to let you create effects and shaders without coding. So the big news in 21.1 for non-coders and those that like those tools is that we're now adding the ability to create scripting logic with a visual drag and drop graph. So i.e., we are doing this with our addition of visual scripting integrated as a fundamental Unity workflow, and basically making sure that that user experience has been adjusted to make it work with lots of other Unity tools. So here's an example, very simple one, also highlighting that we have dedicated support for the input system as part of visual scripting. But basically, like I said, we want to make sure that it is very kind of has a cohesive experience like the other tools. So menus and windows, nodes and namespaces may have been renamed from your use of this tool when it was an asset store package. And of course, we wanted to make sure that all the preferences have been integrated into the Unity editor preferences and project settings. So just part of bringing it, to part of the whole feel that it's a fully integrated part of Unity. We've also made sure the graph editor, the blackboard, the graph inspector, they've all been consolidated into a single window. We generate units automatically the first time the graph window is opened, and now AOT pre-compilation is automatic. So really just a nice integration. And this is just the first phase, and lots of really great stuff to come, and we'll be building forward from here. So jumping across to something that's really exciting and going to make a big difference to your workflows is how we now do C# script compilation. So we're replacing part of our existing editor C# script compilation pipeline with a solution that supports incremental C# script compilation. And this will be for all editor and player use cases. So it doesn't change the behavior of the compilation pipeline. It's really just, the part that's getting replaced is just for both the editor and player C# script compilation. So of course, today, if you're using Unity 2019 LTS or a previous build, you'll note that script compilation is not incremental. So we always do a full recompilation of all C# scripts when building a player. And as your projects grow, contain more C# scripts, this it has impact on your iteration time. So this is basically the first big step of a much larger initiative that will really make the whole entire build pipeline for the player, incremental, which is targeted for the remainder of the year. Now, moving across to performance, again, something which we, of course, working hard on under the hood to make sure that, areas, especially areas like 2D, really receive a lot of nice performance improvements. So here you have everything from sprite processing performance. So we've now got support for sprite shapes that are now compatible with Burst. So it really provides a super fast tessellation method. This gets you like really fast, high performance sprite shape meshes. And when you're using deformation, for example, if you're doing some sort of real-time or runtime terrain modifications, we now have also the sprite post-process functionality is much faster and utilizes a lot less memory. Just lets you, save a lot of time when you're working with large numbers of sprites. But the example that you saw here is just a nice example in the editor itself, where if you've got some sort of an isometric game and you want to like slice up your sprite sheets, this updates just lets you really do that and helps you prep that, especially when your art comes in as a single image. So lots of really nice improvements there across the board. Lots of other fixes to tile maps and the tile palette. So I recommend getting your hands on the beta and really checking a lot of this out if you're building 2D. And there is a lot more. And of course, just as with the 2020 LTS, there are many, many more features we could have mentioned here, but many things don't fit across multiple categories there. So this was really about giving you a broad overview of some of the things you can look forward to. There's definitely some really cool deep dives this week on areas like visual scripting, which I recommend you attend, where you can get a really close view of what's coming there. So otherwise, I'd like to just I hope you're all looking forward to getting your hands on the 2020 LTS or the 21 release, 21.1 release, both targeted for this month. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining our talk and wish you have a great rest of week. Thank you.